The mysterious encounter. The night sky over the small human colony was calm. Stars glittered above like tiny fires. The settlement was quiet, most families inside their homes. But one human, a young technician named Daniel, was still awake. He had been repairing a communication tower at the edge of the colony. His tools clinked softly as he worked. The air smelled of iron dust from the nearby hills. Daniel enjoyed the silence. He thought it would be just another ordinary night, but then he heard something strange. It was not the sound of wind, not the cry of an animal. It was soft, trembling, almost like a child sobbing. Daniel froze, his ears sharp. He looked around, his flashlight sweeping across the rocks and bushes. The sound came again, clearer this time. Someone was crying in the dark. Daniel slowly followed the sound. His boots pressed the dry soil, crunching lightly. The sobs grew louder as he walked. Farther from the colony's lights, finally, near an abandoned cargo shed, he saw movement. A small figure curled up against the wall. Daniel raised his light carefully. What he saw made him blink in shock. It was not a human child. Her skin was pale silver, glowing faintly under the moon. Her eyes were large, deep violet, shining with tears. Her clothes were torn, but made of strange, fine fabric that shimmered. She looked fragile, frightened and lost. Daniel's heart pounded. He had read about aliens in reports, but he had never seen one so close. And this was not just an alien. This was a child. The little one flinched when the light touched her. She pulled her knees to her chest and covered her face. Daniel quickly lowered the light, speaking softly. Hey, it's okay. I won't hurt you." His voice was gentle, careful. The child peeked at him through her fingers, trembling. She made a sound, not in English, not in any language he knew. It was broken, almost like a bird's cry. Daniel knelt down slowly, making himself smaller. He showed his empty hands, palms, open. "No weapons, see no danger," he whispered. The alien child tilted her head. Still scared, Daniel thought quickly. He reached into his bag and pulled out a food bar. He unwrapped it halfway, took a small bite to show it was safe. Then he placed it gently on the ground and pushed it toward her. For a moment she didn't move. Her big violet eyes studied him. Finally, with shaking hands, she picked up the food. She sniffed it, then tasted carefully. Her lips twitched in surprise. It was sweet. She ate faster, as if she hadn't eaten for days. Daniel watched quietly, feeling something stir in his chest. This was no threat, no monster, no danger. This was just a child, lost and hungry. When she finished, she looked at him again. Her tears still glistened, but her breathing was calmer. Daniel smiled softly, pointing at himself. "Daniel," he said, touching his chest. Then he pointed at her. The child hesitated, then whispered something soft. It sounded like Saria. Daniel repeated it carefully. "Saria." The child blinked, almost surprised that he had tried to say her name. For the first time, she gave a small, trembling smile. The night air grew colder, and Saria shivered. Her clothes were too thin, her arms wrapped tight around herself. Daniel quickly took off his jacket and placed it around her shoulders. She tensed at first, then slowly relaxed into the warmth. Daniel sat near her, not too close, giving her space. He kept his eyes on the dark hills around them. Something about this did not feel right. Why was a child alone in the middle of nowhere? Why were her clothes so fine, unlike anything he had seen? And why did her eyes hold such depth, as if she carried secrets far beyond her age? A faint sound echoed in the distance, like metal wings. Cutting through the air, Daniel stiffened. Saria's body went rigid too. She grabbed his sleeve tightly, her violet eyes wide with fear. "Shh, it's okay," Daniel whispered again. But he knew she was not just afraid of the dark. She was hiding from something, or someone. Daniel's heart raced. He looked back, toward the colony lights far behind them. He realized he had a choice. He could run back and call security, or he could stay with her, protect her, and find out the truth. When Saria pressed her small hand into his, trembling but trusting, Daniel made his choice. He stood, pulling her gently to her feet. "Come on, let's get you somewhere safe," he said softly, and together, the human and the alien child walked into the shadows, unaware that this small act of kindness would soon shake the entire galaxy. The night carried them deeper into the rocky hills. Daniel held Saria's hand gently, guiding her through the uneven path. The stars above seemed colder now, as if the universe itself was watching them. Behind them, the faint hum of machines echoed, faint but steady. Whoever was searching for her was getting closer. Saria stumbled, her small legs trembling with exhaustion. Daniel quickly lifted her into his arms. She was light, too light, as if she had been starving for days. Her silver skin shimmered under the pale moon. Glowing faintly against his jacket, she rested her head on his shoulder, whispering something he could not understand. Her voice carried fear, but also trust. Daniel did not need translation to feel it. They reached a small cave hidden among jagged rocks. Daniel stepped inside, setting her down gently. He took out a small lantern and lit it. The dim glow painted the walls in gold and shadow. Saria curled up near the firelight, hugging his jacket tightly. Daniel sat nearby, watching her silently. Every instinct told him she was not ordinary. Her clothes, her aura, the way the night seemed to bend around her. Everything about her whispered of something far greater. But at that moment, none of it mattered. What mattered was the child in front of him, frightened and alone. Daniel tore another food bar in half and handed it to her. She hesitated, then accepted it with small hands. Her big violet eyes never left his face, studying every movement. Slowly, her fear began to fade, replaced by curiosity. Daniel smiled, tapping his chest again. "Daniel." This time she repeated it softly. Neil." Her accent was strange, but her effort made his heart warm. Then she pointed at herself, whispering, "Saria." Daniel nodded with a grin. Saria. The name felt heavy, powerful, as if it carried history far older than the stars. She tilted her head, curious about the lantern. Daniel picked it up. Showing her how the light worked, she touched the glass carefully, marveling at the flame inside. Her laughter echoed faintly, soft and innocent. But then, the laughter died quickly. She looked at him with sudden seriousness, as if remembering something. Her eyes grew wet again, her lips trembled. Daniel didn't know why, but he placed his hand gently over hers. "Shh, it's okay, you're safe here," he whispered. She stared at him for a long time, then leaned closer, pressing her forehead against his hand. It was a gesture of deep trust, one she gave without hesitation. The silence was broken by a sudden thrum in the distance. Daniel's body stiffened. The sound was mechanical, rhythmic, too precise to be nature. Saria's eyes widened, her body tensed. She whispered something quickly, pointing outside the cave. Daniel didn't understand her words, but he understood her fear. They were being hunted. He quickly put out the lantern, darkness wrapping around them. The only light now came from Saria herself, her skin glowing faintly silver. Daniel covered her with his jacket to hide the glow, holding her close. Outside, shadows moved across the rocks. Red light scanned the ground like predators searching for prey. The sound of metal footsteps echoed. Alien voices barked orders in a language sharp like broken glass. Saria buried her face against Daniel's chest, trembling. He could feel her. Heart pounding, he pressed his hand over her head, whispering softly, "Quiet, stay quiet." For long minutes, the searchers moved past, their machines humming like beasts. Daniel held his breath until the sounds faded into the distance. Only then did he loosen his grip, but Saria was still shaking. Tears slid down her silver cheeks, glowing in the faint moonlight. Daniel felt a sharp ache in his chest. He was not a soldier, not a hero, just a simple technician. Yet in that moment, he swore silently that he would not let them take her, not while she looked at him with such desperate trust. To distract her, he pulled a small music device from his pack. He tapped a button and a soft melody began to play. It was an old earth lullaby, gentle and slow. Saria blinked in surprise, then leaned closer. Her violet eyes widened, filled with wonder. She touched the device, as if the music was magic. For the first time, her lips curved into a true smile, a smile that lit up the cave more than the lantern ever had. She tried to hum along, her voice shaky but sweet. Daniel chuckled softly. "That's it. You're getting it." The bond between them grew stronger in that moment, not because of words, but because of something deeper. Two souls from different worlds finding comfort in each other. But outside, the danger had not passed. The alien soldiers marked the ground with strange symbols. They left devices behind, glowing faint red. Daniel didn't see them, but Syria did. Her violet eyes followed the light with dread. She knew what they were. Beacons. They would not stop. They would keep searching, and soon they would return with even greater force. For now, she leaned against Daniel, her breathing slowing. Exhaustion pulled her into uneasy sleep. Daniel sat awake, watching over her. The music device still played its soft tune. His eyes shifted toward the cave mouth. Every shadow looked like a hunter, every sound like a threat. He had no idea why this child was so important, but he knew one thing with certainty. Protecting her was no longer a choice, it was a promise. And far above them, in the cold silence of space, massive ships moved into orbit. The Empire was closing in, and the galaxy was about to change forever. The searchers. The morning sky was dim, covered with thick gray clouds. Daniel stepped out of the cave carefully, leaving Syria asleep inside. The air was heavy, too quiet, almost as if nature itself was holding its breath. He scanned the horizon, and that was when he saw them. Strange red lights blinked on the hills. Placed by the searchers during the night, they pulsed slowly like the heartbeat of a predator. Daniel crouched low, his chest tightening. These were not simple trackers. They were signals, calling something far worse. He returned to the cave, where Syria was already awake, her violet eyes filled with worry. She had felt it too, the danger. She whispered words in her alien tongue, pointing toward the blinking lights. Though Daniel could not understand, he understood enough. They had to move, and fast. Packing his bag quickly, Daniel offered his hand. Syria hesitated, then clung to him tightly. Her trust was unshakable now, and it gave him strength. Together they stepped into the cold dawn, walking away from the colony and deeper into the wild. The further they went, the more Daniel realized how strange this world felt today. Birds were silent. Wind carried no song. Even the ground seemed to hum faintly beneath their boots far above, hidden among clouds. Dark shapes glided, alien patrol crafts, their wings long and sharp like blades. They moved silently, scanning the surface with crimson beams. Every time one passed overhead, Daniel and Syria froze, hiding under rocks or inside dry bushes. The tension was unbearable. Daniel could feel sweat running down his back even in the morning chill. Syria clutched his arm so tightly that her small hands trembled. Hours passed, and with every step the hunters drew closer. Daniel began to see them, alien soldiers marching across the valleys. They were tall, armored in black plates that shimmered with strange symbols. Their eyes glowed faint white behind curved masks. Each carried weapons unlike anything Daniel had seen, silent and deadly. They did not search like men. They searched like machines, precise, methodical, merciless. From the shadows, Daniel watched as one squad reached a human outpost, a small camp used by miners. Without hesitation, the soldiers stormed inside. Their voices barked orders, harsh and sharp. When the miners tried to resist, the aliens stunned them with beams of light. Not a single word of mercy was spoken. It was clear now. The soldiers would destroy anything that stood between them and their lost child. Syria's hand trembled as she watched. Tears welled in her violet eyes. She whispered her language again, faster this time, pleading. Daniel could only shake his head. Shh, stay quiet, we can't fight them. But in his heart, anger burned. These soldiers were not searching with care. They were hunting with rage. Whoever Syria was, she was more than just a missing child. She was someone the entire empire was desperate to recover. That night, Daniel and Syria found shelter in the ruins of an old research station. The walls were broken, half buried in sand, Daniel cleared a corner, lighting a small fire with careful hands. Saria sat close, her eyes glowing in the firelight. She pointed at the stars through a cracked roof, her voice soft, repeating words he could not understand. But then, slowly, she tapped her chest. Saria. Then pointed upward, repeating her words again, stronger this time. Daniel frowned, piecing it together. Was she saying she belonged up there among the stars? Was her home not on this planet at all, but somewhere far beyond? He felt a chill, realizing the truth was bigger than he had imagined. This was not just an alien child lost on a colony world. This was a child of the stars, hunted across planets, chased by armies, and he, a simple human, had become her only protector. Their moment was broken by the sound of metal feet crunching against sand. Daniel's heart stopped. Through a broken window he saw them. 2 alien scouts. Moving slowly, scanning the ruins, their armor reflected the firelight, their weapons gleaming with cold precision. Saria gasped, but Daniel quickly covered her mouth. "Quiet," he whispered, his own breath shallow. The soldiers entered, their footsteps echoing through the hollow station. They swept their scanners across the floor, beams of light slicing the darkness. Daniel held Saria close, his heart pounding so loud he feared they would hear it. The soldiers paused near the broken wall, their masks turning toward the fire's faint smoke. Seconds stretched like hours. Then one soldier stepped forward, raising his weapon. Daniel's grip tightened on a piece of broken pipe he had found earlier. He knew it was useless against their armor, but if they found Saria, he would fight anyway. He would not let them take her. Not now, not ever. But before the soldiers could move closer, a voice called through their comms, sharp, commanding, filled with authority. The soldiers froze, then turned away, moving back into the night. Daniel exhaled shakily, sweat dripping from his forehead. Saria collapsed against him, shaking. They were alive, but only barely. That night, Daniel could not sleep. The truth was clear. These were no ordinary soldiers. They were elite hunters of an empire so powerful it could cross the stars, and they would not stop until they found Saria. He looked down at the sleeping child in his arms, her silver skin glowing faintly. She was more than just a survivor, more than just lost. She was the key to something vast, something dangerous. And Daniel had been pulled into it without warning. Outside, the alien army tightened its net. Dozens of patrols spread across valleys and mountains. Above, warships cut through clouds like silent predators. The Empire was closing its grip. The hunters were near, and the game had only just begun. Danger approaches. The second night was darker than the first. No stars, no moon, only thick clouds hanging heavy in the sky. Daniel carried Saria through the shadows of the ruined station, his every step careful, his ears sharp. He knew the searchers were closer now. He could feel the weight of their presence pressing against the silence. Saria clung to him, her small hands trembling, her silver skin faintly glowing under his jacket. Each time she looked at the dark horizon, her violet eyes filled with fear. Daniel whispered softly, "Don't worry, I've got you." But deep inside, he wondered how long he could keep that promise. A sharp whirring sound echoed above. Daniel's head snapped up. Drones, 3 of them gliding like black insects through the clouds. Red beams swept across the ground, hunting, searching. Daniel pulled Saria into the broken station wall, pressing her against the shadows. The beams slid across the sand, missing them by inches. The drones passed, but Daniel knew it was only a matter of time before they returned. They could not stay. He grabbed Saria's hand and led her into the rocky hills again. The ground was uneven, littered with sharp stones. The wind cut through the valley like a knife. Behind them, the sound of engines roared to life. Patrol vehicles, heavy and fast, moving closer. Daniel pushed himself harder, pulling Saria along, but she stumbled, exhausted, her legs too weak to keep running. He lifted her again, holding her close to his chest. His heart pounded as he climbed the jagged path. Every breath burned, every step felt heavier, yet he could not stop. Suddenly, the ground beneath him shook. A deep hum vibrated through the earth. Daniel froze, realizing too late what it was. A trap. The rocks ahead lit up with glowing lines. Strange alien symbols burned into the ground, pulsing red. Saria gasped, whispering in her language, pointing. At the symbols, her voice was panicked, urgent. Daniel understood enough. These were trackers, or worse, snares. The ground split open with a hiss. Metallic tendrils shot upward like snakes wrapping around Daniel's legs. He stumbled, nearly dropping Saria. The tendrils tightened, pulling him toward the glowing circle. Saria screamed, clutching his shirt. Daniel gritted his teeth, swinging the broken pipe he still carried. He smashed it against the tendrils, sparks flying. One tendril snapped, but two more coiled around his arms. His muscles burned as he fought. The trap pulled harder, dragging him toward the circle's center. Saria pressed her small hands against the symbols, whispering in her alien tongue. The glow flickered, then dimmed. Daniel felt the pull weaken. With a final desperate strike, he broke free. The trap collapsed, the tendrils sinking back into the ground. The red light faded into darkness. Daniel collapsed to his knees. Gasping for air, Saria hugged him tightly, her violet eyes wet with tears. He stroked her hair gently, whispering, "I'm okay. I'm here." But inside, fear clawed at him. The soldiers weren't just searching. They were laying traps, clever and cruel. And somehow Saria knew how to weaken them. Who was this child, and why did she hold such strange power? The answer would have to wait. A deep rumble shook the valley. Daniel looked up and froze. From the clouds above, a massive ship descended. Its shadow swallowed the land, its engines roared like thunder. Dozens of drones poured out of its belly, red lights sweeping the valley. The hunt was no longer quiet. It was war. Daniel ran, carrying Saria through narrow canyons. The drones followed, beams cutting through the night. Each blast hit the rocks around him, exploding in showers of dust and fire. Saria screamed, clinging to his neck. Daniel leapt over broken stones, ducking under sharp cliffs. The chase was merciless. Every corner brought another beam of death. His chest burned, his legs ached, but still he ran. Not for himself, but for the child who trusted him. At last he spotted a narrow crevice in the rocks. Without hesitation, he squeezed inside, pressing Saria against his chest. The drones passed overhead, beams flashing, but they did not find him. For now, they were safe. Daniel sat in the darkness, breathing hard. Saria lifted her head slowly, her violet eyes glowing faint. She whispered something soft, placing her hand against his chest. Her touch was warm, steady. Daniel felt his racing heart begin to slow. It was as if she was calming him now. The bond between them was no longer one-sided. It was growing stronger, but above the massive ship still hovered. Its lights burned against the clouds like an angry eye. And in its command chamber, alien voices echoed, cold, merciless. They spoke of the child of Saria, and one word repeated again and again. Daniel did not know it yet, but he had not just saved a lost child. He had stolen the future of an empire, and now that empire was coming for him with fury enough to burn worlds. The reveal. The valley was silent after the chase. Daniel leaned against the rock wall of the crevice, his breath heavy. Saria sat close to him, her small hands gripping, his arm tightly. Her violet eyes glowed faint in the dark, staring at him with a look he could not read. Fear, sadness, and something else. Something older. Daniel wanted to ask questions, but words failed him. Suddenly, the silence shattered. A blast shook the ground, dust raining from the rocks above. The crevice lit up red as energy beams sliced through the stone. Daniel grabbed Saria, pulling her deeper, but it was too late. The wall exploded outward, throwing them both onto the ground. When the dust cleared, they were surrounded. 6 alien soldiers stepped forward, armored in black and silver. Their masks reflected the glow of their weapons. One raised his arm, shouting in their sharp alien tongue. Saria froze, her face pale. Her whole body trembled, as if she knew these voices. Daniel stepped in front of her, pipe in hand, though he knew it was useless. "Stay back," he shouted, though his voice shook. The soldiers did not understand his words, but they understood his defiance. Two moved closer, weapons humming with deadly energy. Daniel's heart pounded, his throat dry. He knew this was the end. Then, something strange happened. Saria pushed herself to her feet, her violet eyes glowing brighter than ever before. She raised her small hands, and for a moment, the soldiers froze. Their weapons lowered slightly, their movements hesitant. They looked at her not with hatred, not with suspicion, but with fear. One soldier dropped to his knees, then another and another. Within seconds, all 6 soldiers were kneeling before her. Their voices rose in unison, chanting a word Daniel did not understand, but Saria understood. Her lips trembled as she whispered it back, a single word that carried the weight of a throne. Heir. Daniel's mind spun. The child he thought was lost, fragile, and helpless was no ordinary child. She was the heir to an empire, the daughter of a ruler so powerful that entire fleets obeyed his command. Daniel staggered back, staring at her in disbelief. He whispered, almost to himself, "What are you?" Saria turned. To him, her eyes wet with tears, she touched his chest, her voice breaking. "Saria, Heir." It was the only English word she knew to explain. Daniel felt the world tilt under his feet. Everything he thought he knew collapsed in that single moment. But the reveal was not the end. It was the beginning of greater danger. Above them, the massive warship roared louder, descending through the clouds. Dozens of soldiers poured into the valley, their weapons glowing. The 6 who had bowed stood quickly, shouting into their comms. Daniel's heart sank. Now the entire army knew where they were. Saria grabbed his hand desperately, pulling him away. She whispered fast, her words sharp, pleading. Daniel shook his head, confused. "Where? Where do you want to go?" he asked. She pointed to the mountains, to a narrow path hidden in shadows. Her eyes begged him to trust her. The soldiers advanced, their boots shaking the ground. Daniel had no choice. He lifted Saria into his arms and ran toward the mountains. Energy blasts slammed into the rocks around him, the air filled with fire and dust. The valley itself seemed to scream. Daniel pushed forward, lungs burning, legs screaming. Every step fueled only by the thought of keeping her safe. They reached the mountain pass, but the soldiers were close behind. A blast struck the wall beside Daniel, knocking him to the ground. He coughed, dragging himself up, holding Saria close. But when he looked ahead, his heart froze. At the end of the pass stood a figure different from the rest. This one was taller, his armor marked with golden lines, his mask sharper, his presence heavier. The soldiers around him lowered their weapons in respect. This was no scout, no hunter. This was a commander, and his voice carried across the rocks like thunder. He spoke in the alien tongue, his tone commanding. Saria stiffened, her face pale with terror. She whispered to Daniel, her voice trembling. "Father's general." Daniel's blood turned cold. If this was her father's general, then Saria truly was what they feared, the heir of the empire. And now the empire had found her. The general stepped closer, lowering his weapon. Instead, he knelt on one knee before Saria. His voice softened, reverent. He spoke words Daniel could not understand, but their meaning was clear. He was swearing loyalty. Saria shook her head violently, tears falling. She clung tighter to Daniel's arm, refusing to step forward. The general's eyes behind his mask flickered with something dangerous. If she did not return willingly, force would be used. Daniel stepped in front of her again, his voice steady despite the fear in his chest. "You're not taking her," he said. The general tilted his head, studying the human who dared defy him. Then for the first time he spoke in broken English. "Human, she is not yours." Daniel gripped the pipe tighter, his eyes burning with defiance. "Maybe not," he said, "but she chose me." The soldiers around them stirred, whispering in their strange language. The general's mask tilted slightly, as if surprised by Daniel's courage. The moment was tense, the air heavy. One mistake, one wrong move, and fire would rain down. Saria's small hand slipped into Daniel's, her voice soft, broken, but filled with strength. "Daniel, protect her." The general's eyes widened at her words. For the first time, doubt rippled through the alien ranks. A child who was heir, standing with a human, naming him protector. It was more than rebellion. It was a declaration that could shake the empire itself. And in the silence that followed, Daniel realized something. He was no longer just running with a child. He was standing in the middle of a war he did not understand. A war that was only just beginning. The choice. The soldiers formed a circle around Daniel and Saria. Their weapons hummed softly, pointed at him, but none fired. The general stood tall, his golden-marked armor glowing in the firelight of their engines. His mask hid his expression, but his voice carried a dangerous calm. "Human," he said slowly, his broken English sharp like glass. "You stand in the way of the Empire." Daniel clenched his fists around the broken pipe, though it was nothing against their weapons. He felt Saria press closer to his side, her small hand gripping his. Her violet eyes burned with fear, but also with defiance. The general raised his hand and the soldiers lowered their weapons slightly. He stepped closer, his presence heavy like a storm pressing down on the earth. "You touched the heir," he said coldly. "You carried her, you claimed her, you broke the law." Daniel swallowed hard, his heart pounding. He didn't know the laws of an alien empire, but he understood enough. What he had done was not allowed. To them, his kindness was an unforgivable crime. The soldiers whispered among themselves in their sharp tongue. Their words echoed in the valley, filled with both anger and confusion. Some wanted Daniel punished immediately. Others hesitated, uncertain. For the heir herself stood by the human, refusing to leave his side. The general's voice thundered, silencing them all. "The punishment is death," he declared. The soldiers straightened, their weapons shifting. Daniel felt a cold weight settle in his chest. He had known this moment would come. He had no illusions about survival. But as he looked down at Saria, clinging to him with desperate trust, he made peace with it. Yet before the command could fall, Saria stepped forward, her small body shaking, but her voice steady. "No," she said, her first clear word in English, echoing across the valley. The soldiers froze, their glowing eyes widening. Daniel stared at her, stunned. She had spoken for him. Saria turned to the general, her alien tongue spilling out in fast, sharp words. Her voice was filled with command, though it trembled with emotion. The soldiers looked at each other in shock. The general tilted his head, as if he could not believe what he was hearing. Daniel did not understand the words, but he understood her actions. Saria stood in front of him now, her small frame a shield. She had chosen him, chosen to protect him even against her own people. The general's mask turned slowly, his gaze moving from the child to the human. "You protect her," he said in his broken English, his voice low. "But why?" Daniel's throat was dry, but his answer came without hesitation. "Because she's just a child," he said, his voice fierce. "Because she was alone, afraid, hungry." His eyes burned with quiet rage. "Because no one deserves to be hunted." Like that, the general studied him in silence. The soldiers shifted uneasily, their whispers growing louder. They had never heard such words from a human, never seen a man stand before their army with nothing but conviction in his voice. Then Saria shouted again in her language, her small fist pressed against her chest. Her voice cracked, but it carried power. The soldiers grew still, their whispers dying. They looked at her not as a lost child, but as something greater, their heir, their future, their voice of command. The general lowered his head slightly, the golden lines of his armor glowing brighter. "She names you protector," he said slowly, the words heavy with disbelief. "To defy her wish is to defy the blood of the throne." The soldiers stirred in shock. A protector chosen by the heir was unheard of. And worse, it was a human, Daniel. Blinked, his heart racing. Protector. The word felt impossible, yet it was now branded on him by the heir herself. He looked down at Saria, her small hand clutching his, her eyes filled with unspoken trust. He realized that to her, this was not just a title, it was survival, it was family, it was truth. The general straightened, his voice ringing out like thunder. "The heir has spoken," he declared. The human lives. Gasps echoed through the ranks of soldiers. Some lowered their heads in respect, others shook with anger. But none dared speak against it. The law of the throne was final. Daniel's legs almost gave out. The weight of death lifted from him in an instant, replaced by something heavier. Responsibility. He was no longer just a man protecting a child. He was now protector of the Empire's heir. But even as the decision settled, the general's mask tilted toward the sky. His voice dropped low, filled with warning. "Human protector," he said, "you are marked." Daniel frowned, confused. "Marked by who?" he asked. The general's voice rumbled like distant thunder. "By the enemies of the throne." Above them, the massive warship shifted, but it was not alone anymore. Far on the horizon, shadows moved. Other ships, different symbols, different armies. The Empire was not the only power hunting the heir. Others wanted her too, and they would burn entire worlds to claim her. Daniel tightened his grip on Saria's hand. The choice had been made. He lived, but not as a free man. He lived as protector. And now, the true war was about to begin. The twist ending. The valley trembled as the rival warships drew closer. Their shadows stretched across the mountains like claws of darkness. The soldiers of the Empire stiffened, weapons raised. The general barked orders, his voice sharp like thunder. But even he seemed uneasy. For these ships did not belong to the Empire. They belonged to its enemies. Daniel held Saria close, shielding her small body against the rock. Her violet eyes glowed with fear, but also with fury. She whispered words in her alien tongue, sharp and fast. The soldiers around her bowed their heads, listening as if her voice carried command stronger than any general. Daniel could not understand, but he felt it. Saria was no longer hiding. She was rising. The rival ships descended, their hulls jagged, covered in crimson symbols. Dozens of smaller crafts broke off, swarming down like vultures. The air filled with the roar of engines and the scream of weapons charging. The Empire's soldiers formed ranks, shields raised. For the first time, Daniel saw fear in their glowing eyes, and he understood. This was not a rescue. This was an invasion. The general stepped forward, his golden-marked armor shining. He pointed at Daniel, with a voice like stone. "Protector, keep the heir safe." Daniel blinked in shock. This alien commander, who had nearly killed him moments before, was now entrusting him with the Empire's future. It made no sense, and yet it was real. Daniel nodded, his chest heavy with resolve. The first blasts struck the ground, exploding in fire and ash. The rival soldiers poured from their ships, taller, leaner, with armor black as shadow. Their weapons hissed, spitting beams of dark energy that cut through stone like paper. The valley became chaos. Empire soldiers clashed with invaders, metal against metal, light against darkness. The sky burned red, the ground shook, and in the middle of it all, Daniel ran with Saria. Explosions tore the earth behind them. The air reeked of fire and blood. Saria clung to him, whispering her alien tongue in frantic bursts. He did not understand the words, but he understood the meaning. She was begging him not to let go, and he would not. They reached a shattered ridge. Hiding behind broken stone, Daniel pressed his back against the wall, chest heaving. He peeked out and saw the war unfold. Empire soldiers were being pushed back. The invaders moved with ruthless precision, their weapons deadlier, their numbers overwhelming. The general fought like a storm, his golden armor flashing, but even he was being surrounded. Daniel's heart pounded. If the Empire fell here, what would happen to Saria? What would happen to him? A voice answered from above. The sky split open. A massive ship descended, larger than all the others. Its hull gleamed like silver fire. Its engines roared with the power of suns. The battlefield froze. Even the rival invaders hesitated, for this was no ordinary vessel. This was the flagship of the Empire. A column of light beamed down, striking the valley floor. From it stepped a figure taller than any soldier. His armor was carved with ancient symbols. His cloak shimmered like starlight. His face was hidden beneath a helm of silver. But his voice shook the earth itself, my child. Syria gasped, her body trembling. Daniel felt her grip tighten, her eyes wide with both fear and longing. He looked at the figure, realization hitting him like fire. This was not a general, not a soldier. This was the emperor himself, the ruler of the empire, the father of Syria. The soldiers dropped to their knees instantly. Even the general bowed his head. The invaders hesitated, unsure whether to attack or flee. The emperor's presence was too heavy, too powerful. It bent the battlefield with sheer will. Syria stepped forward slowly, her small body shaking. Her violet eyes glistened as she whispered, "Father." The emperor's head tilted, his voice soft, almost tender. "You were lost, and yet you return." But Syria shook her head fiercely. Her hand gripped Daniel's sleeve, pulling him forward. Her voice broke but carried across the battlefield. "Protector," she declared, pointing at Daniel. "Protector." The silence was deafening. Every soldier, every invader, every eye turned toward the human. Daniel felt his chest tighten, his throat dry. He stood frozen, holding the gaze of an emperor who could crush him with a thought. The emperor's voice rumbled low. "A human," he said, disbelief heavy in his tone. "He protected my blood, touched my air, defied my soldiers, and yet she names him protector." His silver helm turned, focusing on Daniel. "What do you say, human?" Daniel swallowed hard, his voice trembling but steady. "I didn't protect her because of who she is," he said. "I protected her because she was alone, because she needed someone." His eyes locked on the emperor. "Because she is a child, before she is an heir." The battlefield stirred with whispers. The invaders hissed in anger. The empire soldiers muttered in shock. But Syria stood tall, her small voice rising again. "Protector," she repeated, stronger this time. Her words were not a plea now, they were a command. The emperor's cloak rippled as he stepped closer. For a long moment he said nothing. Then slowly he raised his hand, and to everyone's shock, he lowered his head slightly. "The heir has chosen," he declared. "The human is protector." Gasps shook the valley. The invaders roared in fury, firing their weapons again. But the emperor raised his arm and the sky itself answered. Bolts of light tore from his flagship, shattering the enemy fleet in a single strike. The invaders screamed, their ships burning, retreating into the dark. The empire stood victorious. Daniel collapsed to his knees, holding Syria close. His body trembled, his mind spinning. He had gone from a simple technician to protector of the most powerful child in the galaxy. And now the emperor himself had declared it law. The soldiers bowed before Syria, their voices chanting her name. The emperor's voice carried above them all. "From this day, the human is bound to the bloodline." He thundered, "He will walk as friend of the empire until the stars themselves fade." Daniel lifted his eyes, his heart heavy. He was alive, but his life was no longer his own. He was protector now, protector of the heir, protector of the future. And somewhere in the shadows of space, other enemies stirred, watching, waiting, planning, because the galaxy had changed forever, and the war was only beginning.